Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another exciting adventure on the SS Popeye. We'll start with a little chanta, as we usually do. Who remembers why we start with a chant? Shame on you.
Why not?
Oh, did I ever? Maybe I never explained it. Oh, I never told you, did I? Did I tell you? Rewind the last few weeks to see if we can find it. It is the tradition of the Jewish people from long ago that before you do any teaching, any sacred teaching, that you chant, because the chant draws the teaching. Or, literally speaking, L'chol chachma yesh nigun miyuchad lo, which is meaning that for every wisdom there is a specific chant. So we chant. Why don't you begin? Hi.
How long does this usually last?
7-8 hours.
That's when he's warmed up.
You can leave whenever you want.
No, I was just wondering because I'll tell my wife.
Yeah, I have no idea. I'm kind of, tell her? Yeah. Two-ish hours. Depends what's on TV tonight. Anything good on tonight? No?
Rabbi?
Yeah? Oh, it's very weird. One time I came to Missoula and I was very tired, and so I didn't go to sleep. And so I turned on the TV and saw myself.
How were you?
It was pretty good. I learned a lot. Took a lot of notes and, called in the show, complained a little bit. There wasn't not enough hair on my head. It's amazing. It's very weird. I've never watched TV before and seen myself on the TV. Except when they interviewed me one time for a TV show. They spent 2 days in my house in my land. And then when I saw it, it was like 5 seconds. Look, and we're gone. 2 days for 5 seconds. That's TV for you. May we never be cursed with seeing ourselves on TV. It's a very strange experience. There's nothing you can do about it. You can't change the words. You can't challenge yourself. You can't even turn the channel. That would be blasphemous. We went on and on and on. I was getting really tired. 1 o'clock in the morning. The thing was still going. My God. These poor people. How could I have subjected them to that? So many hours and hours. This chant is an Aramaic chant. It's in our Jewish mystical tradition. בריחו את אלמנות על נחלו יד בהר הקודשה בריחו את אלמנות על Berichu et alemo not alav nochado Gad bara kudish berichu et alemo not alav nochado Translation. When the Creator chose to create the universe, the Creator created nothing. Nothing but a stone, one stone. And then cast the stone into the void. And from the stone floating through the void, the entire universe came into being. That's a teaching by the 2nd century Galilean rabbi, Yossi HaGalili, Josie the Galilean. He was a great mystic, great Kabbalist. And so his disciples asked him, but that doesn't go with our creation story. And he said, nothing does. Does it? Does anything in real life really correlate with anything you've ever been taught? You've been taught about all the great miracles that God performed for your ancestors, splitting seas, drinking water out of stone, performing great miracles. Where are they? I don't see one. I see Romans. I see a destroyed temple. I see ruins. I see my people in exile, he said. I don't see it. Do you? All you had to do, according to the stories, was call to God. And God would respond like a cosmic bellhop. Ding dong. Would run towards you immediately to pick up your luggage, to carry your burdens, to hold your hurt. No, he said. In the beginning, when the Creator chose to create, the Creator only created a stone and threw it into the void. And from the stone floating through the void, the universe was created. What does that mean? They asked. And he said, it means that you need to go and learn a little bit the wisdom of the stone. Even Shatia korim et even hazoti, he said. This stone is called the stone of nurturance. As it floated through this void, it gave off particles of itself. Each particle became a sun, a moon, a planet, a star. What was left of it fell to one of those planets. And the planet that it happened to fall on gave birth to people and plants and trees and antelope called Earth. Where is the core of this primordial stone now, they asked. He said it sits on top of a hill. What is the name of the hill, they asked. He said, Ha Moriah, the mountain of Moriah. It was the altar of our ancestors. It became their altar. It was the altar of Abraham. It was the altar of Isaac. It was the altar of Jacob. When the people came back to Egypt after their hundreds of years of slavery, they built their temple there. What's a stone? I don't know. Let's see. In Hebrew, stone is Eben. In Hebrew, stone is Chalamish. In Hebrew, stone is Selah. Even, Sela, Chalamish. So many names for stone. Isn't stone just a piece of rock? Stone is very important because stone is condensed. It is matter condensed to the umpteenth degree so that it becomes heavy, it becomes solid. Stone is not an entity in itself. It is an entity that is constituted, comprised of gazillions of entities. Did you ever put a stone under a microscope? Be surprised what you find there. Universes of tiny little grains within which there are universes. Every mountain, every rock, every boulder is comprised of compressionedness, condensedness. Lots and lots of years of sand, of earth, moving itself into itself until it becomes so compressed and condensed, it becomes a rock. We see that happening to anything that stands out there long enough. It becomes what we call today petrified. There's a teaching in the Kabbalah that the soul of a stone cannot be released. So if you break a stone into two, you have two souls. If you split the stone into 55 different pieces, you have 55 souls. There's nothing you can do. You can release the soul of an animal. You can release the soul of a plant by uprooting it. You can release the soul of a person. But you cannot release the soul of a stone. The soul of a stone remains in it as many times as you split that stone. That's as many times as there's a soul, as many spirits of stone in that stone, in every little piece. Every grain of sand is imbued with life. The tree, the plant, has soul too. Now its soul is comprised of its own plant soul, along with the soul of the rock. Every animal has a soul, the teaching continues. Its soul is the soul of an animal, as well as the soul of the plant and the soul of the rock. The human has a soul, and besides its own soul, it has the soul of an animal and a planta and a rock. You can see this in motion, the teaching goes, by looking at petrified wood. So why does the wood get petrified? So science has its explanation, and the Kabbalah says, well, because the tree has the soul of the stone. And so it has the capacity to become stone. The animal has the soul of the stone and the plant, and has the capacity to become both. You never seen a stoned cat? You look into fossils, you see animals embedded in rock, you see plant embedded in rock. Everything has a piece of the other. Animals can be very, very still, like a stone, and they can be movement out of the stillness, like a plant. The human being has the capacity to do all those as well. Everything is an imprint of everything. And that is the teaching of Rabbi Yossi the Galilean, that God only created a stone, meaning everything is really everything else. Everything is really the imprint, bears the imprint of everything else. So we're all one thing. We are not the same, because the one thing becomes individuated through the experience we call life, through this earth, through the crazy things that happen to us. We become individuated. We all come out looking the same. You ever go to a delivery room or to the little nursery in the hospital? Everybody looks the same. Couldn't tell one baby from the other. They label them any which way. It doesn't matter. I mean, you don't know who you are anymore. Everything begins the same. Every cell looks the same. Every little fetus looks the same. Everybody looks the same. But we're not the same once we come into this world. We begin to become individuated. Life experience begins to individuate you. And that's how the world began in our creation story. In the beginning, there was nothing but a stone, symbolic of the oneness of everything. Everything is one thing, one and the same thing. Whether you're a plant, you're an animal. If you are of the planet, you are of the planet. There's a funny little teaching in the Talmud. The ancient rabbis say, how come I can be buried in Alaska if I never lived there? Will the earth in Alaska not say to me, why, we don't recognize this fella. What's he doing here? Right? We don't want him buried here. And the answer is no, the earth cannot say that to me in Alaska. You know why? Because I was created of the stone. I and the stone are one. I and the primordial stone, from which all stones came from and all planets and all stars came from. I am the one. I am the same. You ever see moon rock? I can't tell the difference. Can you tell the difference between moon rock and anything else they sell you in the gift shop? You know, it's a stone. It's a pretty stone. Looks like a lot of other pretty stones that we find here on Earth. Every rock, every stone, whether it's Mars or Jupiter, the sun, the moon, the earth, the stone in Yugoslavia, or the stone in Israel, or the stone here. I brought back a stone from Israel for some guy. He wanted me to bring me back a stone from Israel, he said. I brought him back a stone from Israel. I said, you could have picked it off the street. You could have picked it off your dirt road. It's true, I could have. Easily, I could have. Because everything really is related, interrelated in every which way. In the beginning, God created nothing but a stone. Symbolic, a symbolic teaching that everything begins and began from a complete singleness, a complete oneness, and therefore everything is interrelated. That's why we can talk to each other. That's why we can hate each other, we can love each other, we can continue to fight each other, we can make peace with each other, we can ride horses. And horses can sometimes ride us. You ever had experience with horses? Sometimes they end up being the ones that are riding, and you're the ones being ridden, or driven, or taken for a ride. Right? You see people being pulled by the dog on a leash. I wonder who's walking who. Very confusing to me. Everything is bound up with Tzor HaChaim, in the knot of life, the K-N-O-T, the knot of life. All of existence is bound up into one. What did the Creator create? Nothing, a rock. And from the rock everything came. In the earlier Kabbalah, before Rabbi Yossi the Galilean, his teacher's teacher, Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakona, had a similar teaching that goes something like this. Don't worry, I'll get to the topic of tonight. There's a way to get there. It's just a winding way because there's a lot of fog. So we have to take a different route and go to Bozeman and then take a bus from there. It's very important to understand these concepts before we go into the other stuff. Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakona said, what did God create in the very beginning? A dot. A point. A point. A nakuda, a dot. Now the word nakuda has two meanings. One meaning is a point. The other meaning is a vowel. See, in the Hebrew language, if you don't give me a vowel, I can't speak to you. I'll just sit there with letters. I got letters, I got words, and I can't say them because I don't have a vowel. Will you please give me a vowel? We come into this world, we are words, we are letters, and then we go looking for vowels. We yearn for, search for all of our lives for all kinds of vowels to give our life meaning. Because as we move through life, we're creating sentences, words, in a sense, in the actions we take, the choices we make. We need vowels. Do I hear, we'll start our bid with $5 for a vowel? Do I hear 10? I'll sell you a vowel. Many different vowels. O, I, E, A, O, U. Many vowels. Each vowel is pronounced by the shape of your lip, by the way in which you choose to allow the breath to move through your body out into the world. Will you allow a lot of it out? Ah, or maybe just a little bit, ooh, not so sure. We create with our words. The breath carries the sound, and the vowels give the sound shape so that the words begin to evolve. What do you think words are? Words are a sound. I walk around, I live in the wilderness. I hear animals all the time talking to each other. And I go to the airport, and people are talking to each other just the same. They're talking like the animals are talking. Except the animals don't wear little earphones going down to their pockets. And they talk to each other. But there's the chatter that's going on, and the laughter, and the snorting, and all the kinds of things that we do, which you'll find that is done among the elk herd just as much, or among the donkeys, dogs, cats, lions, and tigers, and bears. So, sound by itself requires vowel to shape the sound into word. The word then communicates a concept, an intention. So, when Rabbi Nechunya ben Akona talks about the world being created by simply a point or a vowel, that means that the primordial thought of the great mystery we call God, when it chose to create, that very beginning of choosing to create is a point of beginning. It is also a vowel because it begins to give life to the primordial thought. It then evolves, just like an artist begins to evolve from a single point of beginning to one direction or another, to create a drawing, or a writer to create a word, like 2% milk. No? So, when you're doing your shopping list, that was only a demonstration, you begin with a point. The point translates your thought onto something outside of yourself. It then begins to take on a life of its own. Did you ever notice that? You start out by just writing down one thing. You really just wanted a container of 2% milk. And you end up writing a long plunger for the toilet, charmin, toilet paper, orange juice, orange drink, Hawaiian punch, cottage cheese, cream cheese. It happens to us too when we go to the store in general. I'm just going in to buy me a little chocolate bar. Be right back. You come back like this. Of course, having forgotten the chocolate bar. You come out with everything else. See? So this is the continuum. This is the flow. This is the stone, the primordial stone, so to speak, that is floating through the void, giving off particles of itself and creating. What is this void through which the stone floated? Well, in the Kabbalah they call this void the Chalal HaPenuya, which means the fertile void, because there really isn't anything like really void of possibility. Everything, every void, every empty space in life, is waiting for a vowel, is waiting to be impregnated, is raw material. It's an egg waiting to be impregnated by your choice, by your move, by how you move your right foot, which direction you're going to move your hand, or your eyes. Every little space awaits possibility. It's called the Halal HaPnuyah, the fertile void. So in the beginning, the Kabbalah tells us, the Creator created the fertile void by simply doing nothing, by simply thinking about creating. The void was created, meaning possibility was created. Into the possibility place, the Creator then threw its point of beginning, its primordial thought. And the primordial thought began to take on a life of its own, as it happens with each of us every now and then. Somebody can trigger in you a little thought, and that thought begins to stagger all over the place. We call this association or suggestion. These are not just psychological terms, they're real. The smallest thing can trigger you into associations of thought with memory, maybe just new memories that haven't even happened yet, concepts, ideas, thoughts. We are constantly on the move. Life is a big, humongous tango. And we're all dancing by ourselves. Sometimes we meet somebody to dance with, but our feet hurt after a while getting stepped on. You have to be careful when you dance with other people. You have to take turns. That's why tango is a good dance to learn. Each partner takes a turn being the boss for 5 seconds or less. So the point of beginning moves into the universe, begins to unfold by means of association. One thing leads to another. In scientific terms, you might call this evolution. My great-grandfather was a sparrow. Every moment we are evolving. That's why the book of Genesis, which literal readers of the book of Genesis, which is our creation story, see it as an anti-evolution. Now personally, I don't believe in evolution, but I don't begrudge anybody that does. It doesn't go against anything in my people's creation story, because it says right there in the book of Genesis, Vayomer Elohim, and Elohim said. Elohim means the source, the one point, source of the many powers. That's literally what the word means. It does not mean, like they translate in English, God. I have no clue what God is. But I live in a universe that has many forces, powers all around me. Every tree, every breath I take, every person, the air between me and you, is full of power. And behind all of this diversity, is one great mystery that we glibly try to peg down and give it a name. And so in our tradition we have so many names, and we have one particular name that reminds us that there is no name. Known in English as the Tetragrammaton. It's in the dictionary now. The Tetragrammaton. The 4-letter name of God in the Hebrew tradition that no Hebrew knows how to pronounce. Everybody else does. Yahweh, your way, my way, Jehovah, But we don't know. We don't know how to pronounce our own God's name, so to speak. That name was left in our tradition as a very potent name because it was there to remind us that no matter what name we give to the unnameable, we are to remember that the unnameable is unnameable. Yes. So we live in this world and we're wondering, okay, I have all these stories about God. The unnameable one, doing all kinds of wonderful miracles, splitting oceans and resurrecting the dead and doing all kinds of wild stuff in the world. My people's story is full of these stories. Yet I live in a world that isn't really as great as it's cracked up to be, and sometimes I wonder, where is this God? Actually, that question was asked about 2,999 years ago. Well, how about 2,900 years ago? Make it more accurate. By a man named Gideon. See, Gideon. Gideon lived in a time when the Israelites, our ancestors, had already come into the land of their ancestors, of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Sarah and Leah and Rebekah and Zilpah and Bilhah and Rachel, all the great-grandmas and grandpas, the mamas and the papas. And all the leaves were brown, and the sky was gray, and they just come to their promised land. And God had performed so many miracles, even splitting not just the Red Sea for them to get out of Egypt, but now the Jordan River to get across to the promised land. And then they fight all these battles against 7 specific nations. They were not allowed to fight anybody else, just 7 specific nations who had come in there before, if you study history, and conquered the people who were there before. And then they thought they would live happily ever after, but then there were other people living in a land that they were not allowed to drive out, who then warred against them, like the Philistines, the Plishtim, and the Moabites, and the Ammonites, and the Yemenites, and the Dolamites, and the Termites, all the ites were iting against the Israelites. And there was war after war after war after war. This is all in the Hebrew scriptural book we know as Judges, Shoftim. Because our people were led by judges. They were the tribal leaders, and then there were the clan leaders within the tribes, and then there were the judges, which meant one woman or one man who would lead the entire people, all the tribes. So, if somebody had a problem that the clan leader could not solve, he or she, with the clan leader, would go to the tribal leader. The tribal leader could not solve it. The tribal leader, together with the clan leader, together with the person bringing the question, would bring it to the judge. Here come the shofet, the judge, the shofet, who was either a man or a woman. We had women and men judges. Like Deborah, for example. She was not just a prophetess, she was also the judge of the Jewish people in her time, close to 3,000 years ago. So they come to Deborah and they bring the problem, and she would help them resolve it, and it would filter back down again, and everybody would go home happy. So in the time of the judges, there was so much war. After we finally came to the promised land, we were not living in peace. So one day, an angel of God comes to Gideon and says, Gideon, God has chosen you to lead the people in victory against the Philistines. Ta-da! Now you'd think Gideon would pick up the phone immediately and call his mother. Tell his mom, I have been chosen by God. But no, Gideon is pissed. And he says to the angel, or to God through the angel, where have you been till now? All these stories, my ancestors of splitting seas and all the miracles you wrought for my people to get to this land, the land of our ancestors, and finally we're here and we're settled, and we're still really not settled. And God's response to Gideon was, Lech, go forth. Ki bekoach hazeh tinotzech, because it is in this power of yours that you shall become victorious. What does that mean? Strange. You'd think maybe he'd get fired at least. So the explanation we're taught by our teachers is God likes a good fight. God doesn't like patsies. God likes a good fight. Abraham, I'm going to destroy the Sodomites and the Amorites. Abraham says, you, a God of justice and mercy, would do such a thing? What if there are 50 honest, innocent people living there? He yells at God, and God says, hey, take it easy, brother. 50 good people, I wouldn't do it. How about 45? I wouldn't. 40, I wouldn't. 35, I wouldn't. 30. God's getting a cosmic nervous breakdown. Years later, people dancing around the golden calf. God says to Moses, step aside, I'll make a people out of you. And just erase these people. And Moses says, Mecheni na misifrecha. You might as well erase me too from your book. All the great leaders of our people always stood up because God always challenged them to stand up. One prophet, Hosea, didn't. So he had to learn a lesson. Hosea the prophet said, whatever you want. That was his mantra. So God says to Hosea, these are not my people. They're not living like my people anymore. What should I do to them? And Hosea says, hey, you're God, whatever. And God says, wrong answer. Tell you what, I got a little instruction for you. I'm at your beckon. Go out into the marketplace and find a prostitute. All right, this is the best commandment I've ever had. All right, what do I do then? Well, you fall in love and you marry and you live happily ever after. All right. So he went out to the marketplace. He found a very attractive woman in a brothel, and he took her out for a date, and they got married, had children, lived happily ever after. Until one day, God says, Hosea, yeah? You want me to go back there again? No, I want you to leave your family. Leave my family? I love my wife. I love my children. How can you ask me to leave my family? And God says, look who's speaking up. Huh? How come you didn't speak up for my family? All people are my family. All creation is my family. And you didn't speak up for them. So Hosea learns his lesson. Of course, he did not leave his family in the end of the story. But God was trying to teach him a lesson. Get attached and then separate. I'm attached to my creations. You want me to just do whatever? Stand up for them. Like Jonah did, like Moses did, like Abraham did, like Gideon did. But Gideon's question was exactly what we are going to be talking about here tonight, or already are. Where's all the great miracles that God performed for our ancestors? Why are we still in trouble? And God didn't say why, but God said, good question. It's good to ask these questions. You should ask these questions. Later on, a few hundred years later, the great prophet Zechariah, Jeremiah says, Madua derech Hashem tzalecha. The great prophet Jeremiah, the temple, the people, everything was being destroyed in front of his eyes. The first Jewish commonwealth was falling apart at the hands of the Babylonian conquerors. And Jeremiah watched helplessly as the promise that God had given to the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob was going to pot. And Jeremiah cries out, Madua derech Hashem tzalecha. Why are the ways of the wicked successful? And he goes on to say, Hayita ke'oyed kenegdi. You have been talking to God. You've been like an enemy to us. So throughout the Hebrew Scriptures, you will continuously find the teachers, the leaders, the prophets, prophetesses, both praising, lauding, being in awe of God, and also arguing with God and asking the question that the people are burdened with and cannot even bring out of their mouths. The unfairness in the world. Where is this great God of whom we read so many stories of miracles? In the 18th century, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev, there's a famous Yiddish prayer that he wrote. To know it by heart, otherwise I'd say it. But this prayer he wrote, he manifested, he came up with, he channeled on Rosh Hashanah, the evening of Rosh Hashanah. It had been a very trying time for the people. If you read Jewish history, 1700s was not a very fun time for Jews in Russia. Pogroms galore. Nor were the 1600s, or the 1500s, or the 1400s, or the 1300s, all the way down to the 3rd century, 4th century. So the people are sitting there with their prayer books, ready to pray to God for a good new year, and to inaugurate the day of judgment, the beginning of the new year, to judge the crops, to judge the peoples, to judge the earth. And Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev, the great rabbi of Berditchev, shuts the book, and he pounds on a bima on the table in the middle of the synagogue, and he says, before God calls us to judgment for the year that passed, I, Levi Yitzchak Berditchev, the son of Sarah, call God to judgment. It's pretty bold, pretty daring. What's wrong with these great, great masters? Aren't they supposed to model to the people the opposite? Don't argue with God. Don't talk back. Accept it. And be complacent. You have to be that great in order to do the argument. You have to know in your heart that there is no argument to argue in order to argue the argument. Let me explain. So here comes the teaching. Have you ever been to kindergarten? Yeah, some of you may never have. I was never in kindergarten, so I missed out on something. There's something missing in my childhood. Upbringing, I've been traumatized by the lack of kindergarten. My family came to this great country when I was like 8 years old, and I had to learn English in 1st grade from scratch. The language was very strange to me, still is. You know, the spelling is very funny. I missed out on kindergarten, and that was really sad, you know. I'm sorry, I'm getting very emotional about missing out on kindergarten. I need to have a little drink here. Trauma was going straight from playing with toys on the floor to sitting on a wooden bench. Now, when you're a little baby and a little toddler, your parents are going to hover over you, and they're going to take care of you. They're going to make sure you're eating, you're drinking. Did you eat? Did you drink? I mean, these questions, of course, continue even later, but that's just out of habit. It's nothing personal. They don't really mean it. You know, it's just something that parents do out of habit. I do it to myself. You know, I have grown children. They're in their 80s, you know, and I say, so when I'm on the phone with them, I would suddenly say, oh, must be, let's see, it's about 6 o'clock your time. Did you eat? What the hell am I doing? I want you to hang up on me when I say things like that. You know? We hover. We take care. We hold a hand. Ooh, watch out. Oh, don't cross the street yet. Look both ways. Oh, here comes the piano. Wait, come back here, kid. Right? We teach the children. We're hovering over them. We're watching them. We're taking care of them. You know, what's this kid doing? What's that kid doing? Are they up the slide on the tree? You know? I was in Israel with a few years ago. The Israelis asked me to bring some Native Americans. So I kidnapped a few. We raided a village nearby. I kidnapped a few Native Americans. We brought David Carson and Cam Nightchase. David Carson is a Choctaw elder, And he has two little girls, two twins. And so we brought them to Israel. David Carson did a big medicine wheel and made a rain ceremony. After he left, it rained and flooded Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, and there were the newspapers, floods into basements of people's houses. But anyway, while he was there, we were sitting in a circle in a big Bedouin tent, and we're singing and chanting and teaching and doing all kinds of things. And he's constantly looking around and said, "Gershon, did you see the twins?" Every 5 minutes, "Did you see the twins? Did you see the twins?" Finally, I duct taped him to a tree. You know? Everything. I said, "They're over there." "In the tree?" "No, beyond the tree. Not in the tree." You know, like this is the parent. I mean, I'm like that too with my little kids when they were little. Now, that's the story of our people. Does that answer your question? Did you have a question? So in the beginning of the story of our people's story is full of that. God we're kids as a people. The world is a fledgling world. The human is a fledgling creature. And the Creator is kindergartening the creation. Holding hands, walking with Enoch, walking with Noah, walking behind Abraham. See, that's a very important piece right there. The Torah tells us that God walked with Enoch, Chanoch in Hebrew. God walked with Noah. O Elohim metalech et Noach. And Elohim, the source of the many powers, was walking with Noah. Vayitalech Chanoch im Elohim, and Chanoch, Enoch in English, walked with God. You know, this is like the parent holding the hand of the 3-year-old. Sooner or later, we become adolescents. We dance around golden calves. Moments after we were told not to. We become a little rebellious. We try to find our own way. If you read the story, you'll see that it's a story of birth and adolescence and teen years and reaching maturation. When you're an adult, now you're on your own. Now you're on your own. I mean, to a certain extent. You know, your kids still call you and ask for money. Excuse me. Yes? Oh, hi, sir. What's going on? Yeah? Your husband found a good job? Great. Wonderful. How are the kids? Oh, yeah. Really? Uh-huh. You want to send me another video? Please. It's okay. Don't send me any videos. I'll see it when I get to the house, to your house, when I visit you. So, what's new? You need what? Oh, well, I'll see what I can do. I'll see what I can do. You know, a couple $100, eh? All right, I'll see what I can do. Okay, take care. Bye. Excuse me, I'm not done yet. Hello, Father? Yes? Uh-huh. Yeah. See? The cycle continues. It doesn't end. You know? It doesn't end at all. It goes on and on. Okay, so there are some things where, and that's like, you know, we call God every now and then. But the fact is that when we look at our life and our experience in being in this world in the present, we need to look at it in the present, not through the rearview mirror of the past. The stories of the past are memories of us as creatures of this world in our fledgling state, in our relationship with the Creator. The Creator just created Pinocchio. And now, little by little, Pinocchio learns its own way. And we move on. And we're on our own. Not quite, because you can always call. You can always ask. Now, let's say you did call. Let's say you're older people, as most of you are sitting here, and you call your parents or your rich uncle. And your rich uncle or your parents, you know, say, well, we'll see what we can do, but it may not be for a while, and you need something right now. You're not going to lose faith in them, are you? You're not going to write them off, are you? The same thing here. We have grown as a creation, as a people, as a world. This world is very old. It's been around for a while. You're not little babies. I know you just got here a few years ago, and you're only here for the weekend, as we've spoken of many times in the past. But you're mature adults against the lifespan of the universe. You're grown-ups. And so, if I am to always call God to help me out of every single thing, then God loses the godness and becomes to me as a bellhop who carries my bags. Or if I see God as a punishing God, if I don't do things right, God is going to punish me, then God becomes a cosmic cop. So what is God? Is God a cosmic cop? That if you don't do things right in the world, you're going to get punished? That's why bad things happen to me. Now I get it. It happened to me because I was a bad boy. And so God, the great cosmic cop, penalized me, fined me. Or, gee, I really need something really badly, and so I call to God. All of a sudden, I call to God. For weeks, I never called home. Never called my father. Never called my mother. But now that I need something, I suddenly call to God. In that way, God becomes the cosmic bellhop. You just ring the bell, and the bellhop shows up. So, before a creation begins to ask these questions, like, where is God going? Where has God gone? Why doesn't God answer my email? The creation first needs to ask about the Creator, how do I view the Creator? What is my perspective on this thing called God? Is God only some name and entity that I invoke, I conjure when I am in dire straits? And the rest of the time, who cares? I'm on my own. Well, then take that same attitude that I'm on my own, and I make my own choices, my own actions, also to the place of my own consequences. People pray, for example. I prayed so hard. What good is prayer? What good is prayer? You pray all the time, nothing ever happens, right? You pray for I pray for $10 million all the time, because I have plans on how to spend it, or how to spend a little bit of it, I'd give $9 million to Rick and Nan, and all I need is $1 million. I'd be very happy. I could buy alfalfa to my horses, and because nothing grows in New Mexico, and I'll be very happy. So I pray and I pray and I pray. Ed McMahon never shows up. Dick Clark never shows up. They keep writing me letters. They promise me all kinds of things. They never show up. I remember 1982. Well, actually, I remember 1982. 82. My life was in dire straits. Nothing was working out. Life was working out for me in the public eye. But in the private sector, my life was a struggle. And I was struggling and going into hock financially and having a really hard life, full of pain and suffering and how you say, disconcertment, agony. All for the sake of my people. As sacrificing for others, for my community, for things I believed in. And I knew for sure that, since I was suffering on behalf of very important causes in life, God would certainly listen to my prayers. That God was with me. God is drawn to great holy people like me. And so I prayed and I prayed and I prayed, and I really felt I was talking to God in my prayer. I really felt the vividness of it. And it just made me feel so sure that I would be answered. And that one day, in a few weeks, a letter would come from out of nowhere with a lot of money. And my life would be so eased up. And the letter never came. All I heard was absolute nothing. Silence. Today, I sit here in my life today and I look back at those days of very hard struggle, very heart pain. And I thank God for that silence. So, this day, I look back at those days and I thank God for not answering my prayers. And not answering my prayer in the way I had worded it, in the way I had intended it, in the way I had thought I needed my prayers to be answered. Dreams I never have thought of have evolved, and I am one of the happiest men alive today. The other two men are Hugh Hefner. So, that is that stone floating into the Halal HaPanuya, the void, the fertile void. A stone, silent. Stone, by the way, in Hebrew, one of the most ancient root names for stone is not Eben and not Halamish and not Selah, the words I gave you earlier, but Domem. Domem means silent, still beings. The stillness that filters through the sky, filters through the void, that floats constantly through the great chasm, the great fertile void. By virtue of its silence, unimaginable prayers are being answered. But if I'm busy looking for the prayer to be answered in the way I determine, then God becomes to me a cosmic bellhop. And I can wait forever. As you know, if you ever went to a hotel, waited for the bellhop. But if I give God the space that God gives me, it's like God steps back to allow me to be human in all of my foibles, my successes, my failures, my weaknesses, my strengths, my eccentricities. I, too, as creation, need to, in turn, step back, as in any relationship, to give the other party of this relationship of creator and creation the space to be what creator is. What presumption, and who gave me the presumption, that my prayers and my needs in life need to be responded to in my way? Which leads the Creator to say to Isaiah, Yeshayahu, the great prophet Yeshayahu, 2,700 years ago, heard the voice of the God saying to him, how's it go? Kegova shamayim me'aretz ken gova ma'asai ma'asechem. Like the distance between heaven and earth is the distance between my ways and your ways. Lo machshavotai ke machshavotechem. My thoughts are not like your thoughts. I think you into existence. I am not knowable. This is an old Kabbalistic teaching about God. God is not knowable because God is not created. So God cannot be known by created beings. Created beings can be known by other created beings. But God, who is not created, cannot be known by created beings. So when we ask the questions, where is God? Why doesn't God answer my prayers? We are asking it from a place that is, in a way, dismissing God's right to be God. In a way, neglecting the consciousness, not not employing the consciousness of othering, which is a very fundamental requirement in any good relationship, is to other the other. There is me, and there is the other. And the other is not like me. Even though we've been living together for 80 years, and, we love each other, the other is not me, and I am not the other. And the magic of it is that nevertheless we still are together. Now, what's my relationship with Creator? I cannot see Creator except through creation. I have my doubts every now and then. Maybe everything just did come into existence from some atom, but who made the atom? Oh, I don't know. Stop asking those questions. I was walking through the airport one day, and I see this magazine called Scientific American. And on the cover it says, scientists are coming closer to discovering the origin of the universe. I grabbed that magazine, and I paid the lady a whole bunch of money for it. And I ran outside the kiosk to read it. And it said they had come to the conclusion that the universe, the origin of the universe, was another universe. It's a good way to sell a magazine. You know, I don't buy any of those magazines no more based on the cover. Great. Another universe crash, and this one can't. That's wonderful. Very nice. See? They still can't figure it out, because the more you go back, what's the origin of that? What's the origin of that? What's the origin of that? You get to nowhere. You get to the place maybe you don't want to go. That there is something much bigger for us to comprehend. And that biggerness is the miracle behind the leaf that comes out in spring, and the flower that blossoms in summer, and the heart that beats for thousands of billions of seconds without getting any weaker. Well, sometimes it does. I mean, for the most part, we walk on our capillaries every day. We stand on blood vessels without popping. We walk up and down stairs without tripping and falling. We go to the bathroom 1,000,000 times, a gazillion times. I know I talk about bathrooms a lot, but you know, it's really an important part of the body. The bowel movement, which is the only movement I belong to, you know. And can you imagine, what material are these things made of that they can carry all this blood all these years, and all the gook and junk in your body, day after day after day after day after day after day. Did I miss a day? This is the miracle. This is the prayer that I never asked for, that happens to me all the time. So what is my relationship with Creator is a number one question that I must ask myself before I ask the other questions of why is the world a mess, or why do people do bad things to each other, or why do zebras get their butt eaten up by lions? Why can't lions eat veggies? These questions are based on a presumption that doesn't exist. Who created the presumption that things are supposed to go well for you all the time? Who gave you that? Who gave you that? Because when you're asking a question, any kind of question, the question must have a presumption. The presumption is the axiom upon which the question has any validity to even be asked. This is why in the book of Job, as I mentioned many times before, Job loses everything. His health, his wealth, everything. The only thing he has left is telemarketers. In those days they were live. And they came to him daily, selling him serpentine stone and all kinds of things he didn't need. For 38 chapters, the telemarketers are trying to explain to Job why he is suffering. Finally, when they go away, his suffering ends. On the 39th chapter or so, God appears to Job. And you would now think that God is going to answer the great question, Why is a person like Job such a sweet man? Never hurt anybody in his life. Always looking out for everybody else. Always doing the right thing. Why is he suffering? Why not pick on some of those jerks out there? I got a list of them right here in my back pocket. I bet each one of you does. And you would think God is now going to answer the question, but God does not answer the question. Instead, God takes Job on a nature walk. He says, where were you when I created the world? Do you know what makes the eagle fly? You know what brings the clouds? You know what makes the ant crawl? You know what makes the hawk sneeze? It goes on and on and on. Instead of answering Job's question, God asks a lot of more questions. And the reason being, as one of my teachers back in Jerusalem used to say, to answer the question would have been to acknowledge that there is one. And that would be very misleading. Based on what do you have your question? Did someone tell you something or promise you something when you got here? Do you have any writing or any written proof? Yes, I do. I have my scriptures. It says here that God did this for them and split seas and put water out of rocks and resurrected the dead and healed the leprosy of the sick. This is my story, my people's story. Elisha, the prophet, is healing people and making miracles through God. One little pot of oil turning into thousands of pots of oil, and one loaf of bread 20 loaves of bread turning into thousands of loaves of bread. This is all in my old scriptural stories by just one prophet, Elisha, the disciple of Elijah. Not to mention all the other miracles that we read about. Yeah, I was promised. It says so right here. The answer is, well, it also says there that little by little, those miracles, those big pomp and circumstance drama miracles, ebbed, went away. Bye-bye, little by little, less. As you progress through the scripture of the people, the story of the people, you find less and less and less and less. They become more isolated, more individual, to this very day. There are miracles that happen to people all the time. Isolated, individual. No big pomp and circumstance thing coming out of the sky and, with big hands coming out of the sky with checks or credit cards. Nothing like that. But individuals say, a miracle happened to me, a miracle happened to me, a miracle happened to me. We've all had that. Maybe some of us don't even recognize it when they happen. But they happen. I remember when I was living in California, a long time ago in the mountains of California. I never knew there were mountains in Southern California. On the 4th day of my being there, I saw them. On the 5th, they were gone. On the 7th, they came back, so I went up there real quick while I could still see where they was. I rented me a little cabin in the middle of nowhere in the Angeles National Forest. I had to park somewhere at a ranger station. It wasn't even a station. It was just a little camp out. And walk a half a mile along a creek to my cabin. No electricity, no running water, no cable, nothing. Bathed in a little creek down below with biodegradable soap. Had to duck in the water whenever Boy Scout troops would come by. Hiking. Hold my breath for 5 minutes till they all passed by. Took their water, canteen, with biodegradable soap. So one day, I'm ready to go. I have to go back to the city. Very important. I got to catch a flight. So I hike back to my car, get into the car, turn the ignition. Nothing. I say, that's not fair. It's one thing for me to break down in town, but out here, no phone, nothing. Miles and miles from any place. And I got to catch a plane. I have to describe to God what that was. Airplanes. Nowadays we have airplanes. Things that fly. Little things you think are gnats. They're planes. Nothing. I tried all the prayers of my ancestors. What if they're 45? What if they're 40? No response. I will not go to the Pharaoh. No response. tried all the old prayers. All of a sudden, I'm sitting there really, really peeved. And a cloud of dust appears from out of the blue on this dirt road. I say, oh my God, what's this? Oh, no, I didn't mean it what I said. You're a nice God. Cute guy. You're so, oh, good you little God, good you little God. Such a nice God. You're exalted, elated, I love you, blessed are you in all prayer. Hallelujah. And the dust came closer and closer, and a truck appeared out of the dust. A tow truck. A big burly guy with tattoos all over his face and body, driving this truck. And he looks out at me with a cigarette dangling out, saying, because, you were allowed to smoke back then, and said, there's 67 Pinto out here. And I said, no, that's just me. I later learned there were no Pintos in 67. But, it shows you how much those angels know about cars. Maybe I misheard him, I don't know. But just me. I said, all right, sorry, must have taken the wrong road. Take care, buddy. All right. Watched him pull out and start going away.
You're kidding.
I mean, miracles don't happen anymore. So, as important as it is that we believe in miracles, it's just as important that we don't. With the same conviction that I don't believe in miracles, they don't happen like that anymore. They happen in more subtle ways. Subtle ways, like, you don't have a toothache. That's a miracle, right? Or your car does start. That's a miracle. But this is too vivid. This is this is not for our day. That was for some other time in history. That's for the biblical times, yeah. Well, the story of the ancient rabbis and their miracles. That's it. So I let the guy go. What the heck? Well, all right. I just yell at him. But I do remember hesitating. I sat there for a while because I was just shocked, because I wasn't ready for this. And so I yelled at him. And he made a U-turn. Made so much dust that's still there today. You see a pile of dust in the Angeles National Forest. And so he came back and said, yep, what's the matter? I said, well, I was wondering why you're up here anyway. Maybe you can give me a little boost, huh? So he said, sure, I hate to have come all the way up here for nothing. So he gave me a boost. I offered him some money. He didn't want it. And he took off in a cloud of dust into the heavens, right into the sky. Great balls of fire coming out of his truck. Clouds opened up, and he was swallowed up into the heaven. And my car went dead again. And so I was able to make it to the airport, get to where I was going. What I'm saying with this little anecdotal story really did happen to me is that sometimes, we are not used to the miracles we really want. And they happen a lot more often to us than we can imagine. It's up to us to pay attention. So when they do happen, we'll say, well, I'm glad you came anyway. Will you please give me a boost? Instead of dilly-dallying and waiting and saying this couldn't be because these things don't happen anymore. And they only happen in the stories. Now, the last book or story in our Hebrew scriptures, historically, meaning chronologically, is the story of Esther. And we read that on the holiday of Purim, the book of Esther. Chronologically, that's the last of the books. That is the final, not in order of the way they appear in the canon and in the canonization, but historically, she and her uncle Mordecai and Daniel and Hananiah and Mishael and Azariah and Malachi, these are the final of the last prophets of the kindergarten age, the toddler age. From then on, we move into another age where we have individual people, but no longer big national miracles, like in the pomp and circumstantial kind of dramatic way. In the Kabbalah, the ancient Kabbalists loved this story of Esther because it is the only story in our people's scriptures, sacred scriptures, that makes absolutely no mention of God. There is not a single mention of God in the entire story. It's a story of a great miracle where the people, our ancestors, almost totally annihilated by the Hitler of that period, 2,400 years ago in Persia. And the Persian Empire ruled all from India all the way to Ethiopia, which is a whole region in which our people were scattered living. And we were rescued miraculously through the efforts of Esther, but it was miraculous that it happened through one person, as in other stories. But no mention of God. So the ancient teachers tell us, why is there no mention of God in the entire story of Esther? A holy scriptural story with no mention of God? A story about an incredible miracle of the rescue of an entire Jewish world population and no mention of God? And the ancient teachers tell us, yes. Because what does the word Esther mean? Esther is a Hebrew word. It means concealed. It means hidden. Astir, astir et panai. You see the word Esther in the book of Exodus, in the book of Deuteronomy, earlier books, where God says to Moses, there will be a time when I will hide my face. Meaning that the things that happen in life that are miraculous, supernatural, will happen in the context of the world as I designed it, within the natural. You have to go looking for it a little bit harder. It'll be camouflaged. I will hide my face. I will conceal my face. Esther means concealed. Now, we call that particular book the Scroll of Esther. We read it as a scroll made of deerskin every spring, the story of Esther and that big miracle. In the Hebrew, the Kabbalists point out, the word for scroll is Megillah. Megillah. Wow. Well, so what? Well, Megillah is related etymologically to another word, Megaleh. Just change the vowels to protect the innocent. Megaleh means to unravel, to reveal. So, Megillat Esther is called, the revealing of that which is concealed. And so the story of Esther is a story that deliberately, they taught us, left out God. Because it was the beginning of a new age for our people in the world to begin seeing the Creator in creation, as opposed to something outside that intervenes, that comes in every now and then and intervenes. Rather than seeing God as a great cosmic bellhop, as we said, a great cosmic cop, God becomes more integrated within our lives, concealed within the everyday happenings and doings and goings on of life, of your personal life, your communal life, your social, societal life, and the global life. And that's why Esther, she is surrounded, the story tells us, by 7 maidens. Who are the 7 maidens? The ancient Kabbalists ask. And they respond and they say, it's a teaching by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai in the 1st century, the 7 maidens who surrounded Esther in the palace in Persia: sun, moon, Jupiter, Saturn, Mercury, Venus. Did I miss one? Mars. These are the 7 maidens who surround the hidden. Oh, but who is the hidden then? Earth. Earth is the hidden? Yes. For Earth is a mask that conceals the presence of the Creator within all of its creations. 300 years ago, there was a great Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, who when he was a little boy, he was playing hide-and-go-seek. Some of you heard this story, so please don't listen to it again. Go like this. Oh, yeah. He was playing hide-and-go-seek, and he was hiding, and they were seeking, and then the kids got bored, and they began to go looking elsewhere to play something different, but they left poor Shneur Zalman hiding. So when he finally figured out that he wasn't being looked for anymore, it upset him, and he went home to his daddy, who was a great teacher, Menachem Mendel, and he said to him, "Father, I am very sad." His father said, "Why?" He said, "Well, I was playing hide-and-go-seek, and the other kids stopped looking for me." And so his father said, "Now you know how God must feel." So God plays hide-and-go-seek. And the question is, how often do we go looking? When we take a hike in the mountains, take a walk, look into the eyes of a lover, a friend, an enemy. In the beginning, God created a point. Some say a stone. And through the stone into the fertile void, some say, began to move that point and extend it into possibility. And so we are the benefactors of all that possibility. We are not newcomers to the world. We're old hat. We're graduates. We're living in the graduated world. Things are happening very fast these days, you notice? I mean, I remember a time when there was no such thing as wireless anything. I remember a time when there was no such thing as a transistor radio. I remember a time when there was no such thing as a TV, at least where I was coming from. Then when I came to the United States, I saw people on a little box in a window, little tiny people running around, shooting at each other on my uncle's TV. Nowadays we get very impatient when we turn on our laptops and it doesn't go on fast enough. It's taking too long. It's taking 30 seconds. Why, in the old days we used to do this. Remember them? Machines? They're called typewriters. They were very heavy things that you could not take on a plane with you. And you couldn't put it on your lap either. Some of you may have been alive when we had typewriters. Some of you may have been alive when we had not little hard disk things, but big floppy things. You can bend them. No? Some of you might have been alive when we didn't have cassettes. We had long, winding wheels on big machines that you push buttons with all your might to start playing. And then the tape would get all caught in things, and you'd have to rewind it with pencils and all kinds of things. Some of you were alive when there were no such thing as camcorders except in the hands of CBS, ABC. But you were stuck with a little tiny Super 8 camera with a little film thing that you have to put in there. And then you push a button and it goes... No sound. Right? Then you have to take it to Photomart. Well, they didn't exist either. You took it to a place and you waited 5 years for them to develop every little frame And then they would give you a reel, which meant you then had to go to another store and spend hundreds of dollars for a movie projector. Remember them days? Remember the days when you just walked into the airport and kept walking? all the way to the gates? And you had leg room galore. Elbow room. Because they only had 6, 7 seats on an airplane back then. Now they stuff thousands of seats into one little plane. You can barely sit there. You sit there and you hate people. Squished with your nose up against the window. On SkyWest Delta Airlines. Fasten your seatbelt. Why? There's no way I'm going to get out of this seat, no matter what happens. I'm squished. Reaching down between your legs to get something out of your carry-on. Unzippering, and people looking at you. Things have changed in the world, dramatically. You know? Used to be a time you get into your car and have a nice quiet drive. Now you get into the car and get a heart attack. Ding dong, ah! Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. Used to be more independent. Those days are gone. Things are happening very fast. The world is spinning faster than we can hold on for our dear life. Every time you buy a lighter laptop, they come out with a lighter laptop after you just spend $2,000. Technology is going faster than we are. I just found out that there's such a thing as wireless internet. I didn't know about that. Cell phones. I used to dream one day to just walk around and have a telephone in your hand. Now everybody has one. It's no longer my dream. We're very old. And I know, maybe this sounds all weird and stuff like that, but I am weird and stuff like that. But I speak to you from the old Kabbalistic way of thinking, which is that every generation that comes back, future generations that come back, may have been here before, which is why progress, so to speak, technological stuff happens so fast. Why do you think we move so fast? I mean, only 100 years ago, we were all riding around on a horse and buggy. I'm going to the mall. I'm going to there were no malls back then. The mall was, friendliest country store downtown on a dirt road. There were no airplanes. People used to go to war standing in line with drawn swords and fixed bayonets eventually. Now they sit there by computers on an airplane, dropping bombs, having no sense of what's going on down below, or what the ramifications of their actions. How is that possible? If we can create so much new technology, such high, incredible stuff that would be science fiction to people 50 years ago. Remember Orwell's 1984? We dreaded 1984 coming. Nothing happened. Everybody was worried about 2000. 2001 Space Odyssey. We figured, these were so futuristic, it was science fiction stuff, and now we're living in a science fiction era. Things that people wrote about years ago. Why is it then that within 50 years or 40 years or 30 years, so much technological progress has happened? Boom, 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 boom. Whereas in the 1700s or 1800s, what did they invent? A feather? What did they invent? Nothing. I think different hats. So instead of wearing a hat this way, They wore it this way. No? And that was it. Maybe a later model scabbards for your sword. You know? They still wore knickers and wigs in Europe. The only smart people were the Aboriginal people who still remained Aboriginal. So, how is this possible? Why is this suddenly happening? So, huh? UFOs, of course. Did I tell you I was kidnapped by UFO the other day? It dropped me here in Missoula. We got probed and everything. Felt good though. It's not so bad at all. Got a free massage and a free ticket to Roswell. So now, in the Kabbalistic way of thinking, it goes like this. Every series of generation, like every couple of 100 years or so, souls come back. And they bring back with them their next step. And so there's a maturation. We're mature. We're old souls. And so 1, 2, 3, we get here, we build a car right away. We're not going to go back to horse and buggy. We did that 100 years ago. We're old souls. Very old souls. Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shalomi is a great rabbi who lives nowadays and lives in Boulder at the Naropa Institute. Teaches there. He said like this. He said, tradition is a marker we leave behind so that when we come back again, we don't have to reinvent it all over again. And so the stories of our people are an impetus. They are very important teachings that in every generation we come back to it again and again and again and see it differently. It speaks to us in a different language today than it did 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago. Even in the Talmud, 2,000 years ago, they tell the story of Moses. They make this story about Moses getting the Torah at Mount Sinai, and then God says to Moses before he's about to head down, you should know that there are 70 different ways in which to translate this Torah. And Moses goes, yeah. Look, you're God, you're absolute. Can't you just give me the law the way it is? Now I can give it to the people. And God says, I am infinite. And therefore what I speak or resonate is infinite. Possibilities are infinite. The possibility of that one point of beginning is infinite. Where would you take it? This way, that way, the other way? You make a picture of Mickey Mouse? Or the outline of a parachute? Moses didn't understand. So God picked up Moses and threw him into the future. He landed at the feet of Rabbi Akiva 1,000 years later. And the rabbi was expounding and teaching. And Moses didn't understand a single thing he was saying. So Moses turns to one of the disciples and says, excuse me, what the hell is he talking about? And the disciple says, oh, he's discussing the teachings of Moses. Moses got it. So we're old folks. So when we were little boys and girls, historically, God walked with us, held our hands, showed all kinds of magic tricks to us. When we bled, God stopped the bleeding. When we were at war, God made us victorious. When we needed to cross a river, God split the river. We needed water in the desert, God brought out water from the stones. All these stories are reminding us about our childhood. And that's what God says to Jeremiah. Zacharti lo chesed neurayich, ahavat glulotayich, lechtech acharai b'midbar, eretz lo zeroah. I remember your youth. The day when we first encountered each other, and you followed me into the desert, a place of no promise. No promise. The promise is in your head. No promise. Because promise is very limiting. No promise means endless possibility. Promise means I'm stuck. I'm confined to the promise. It's like Rabbi Nachman of Breslov in the 1700s, in one of his great writings about healing, he says, do you know what makes people so sick? He says a lot of things about that. We set each other up for disappointment. People set each other up for disappointment. All the time. We do it all. I mean, I don't, because I'm very special. But, and you don't. The people who didn't come here tonight. We set each other up for disappointment. Bless you, the moment we got to this world, we've been set up for disappointment. That's why we're asking all these questions. Where's God? Why isn't God doing this? Why not this? Why isn't God taking care of the world? What's going on here? And we're set up for disappointment. Somebody somewhere promised us something without explaining. Somebody taught us stories about what happened in the past in our tradition without explaining that this is a story of a progression from infancy to toddlerhood to childhood or to adolescence to teenagers to adulthood. We passed bar and bat mitzvah. We're old people now. We're thousands of years old. The souls that come into this world, which Kabbalistically explains why the progress is so rapid. Because we're not new souls coming in saying, wow, because otherwise we just try to make fire with sticks again. We're old souls. Been there, done that. Now we go on. Being old souls, we need to also remember that the good old days when Mama and Daddy took care of everything and paid the rent, those days are long gone. And we're now on our own. Isn't that great? Independent, to make choices and take actions, and to know that Mommy and Daddy, God is still there all the time, but relating with creation in a whole different way. And that is what happens in the prophetic experience, new souls, the prophetic experience of Abraham. Abraham has a prophetic vision where God says to Abraham, walk before me, walk in front of me. Very different. In all the other stories before Abraham's story, God is walking with Enoch. God is walking with Noah. But when it comes to Father Abraham, God says to Abraham in a prophetic vision, I want you to walk in front of me. That is the prophecy of the time to come, the time that we are living in, and the people recently before us, where God walks behind us. We are now asked to become adults, to become bar mitzvah, to come of age, and to make choices and take actions that are responsible and that are uniquely ours. To know that God is with us, but giving us the space, as a parent gives the space to a grown child. Any questions? Perfect example. Well, I don't know what they would say, but I would say, that in everything in life, no matter how mature and old you are, there is both. There's the gift and there's the curse. There's the blessing and there's the curse in anything. In anything that we do, everything has its opposites. Everything has its poles, polarization. And that is not about wisdom so much as it is about choice. So there could be, we have all kinds of great science fiction movies, like The Island of Dr. Moriarty, and Frankenstein, which was in 1800s, and in the Jewish tradition we have Legends of the Golem. We have many stories where the human being takes the capacity of progress to the extreme. And when you take anything to the extreme, you come to the place of not nice. So, Now, Shmau, yesterday, 100 years ago. King Solomon was a very wise king. During his reign, there was no war, because he had 1,000 wives. And so he had no time for war. And in his teaching, he said, Ma shehaya hu sheyeh, ma sheyesh hu kvar haya. What is already was, what will be already was. Human nature is human nature. We are no different today, basically, intrinsically, than we were when we were little boys and girls. We're a bunch of little boys and girls in big, giant bodies, with a lot of hair, and my age growing out of places that I never thought hair would grow. But basically, we're kids. We're very old kids. So old souls does not guarantee that you're going to employ your maturation in a good way. That still remains to be seen when you come to the world of free will. What you going to do with it? And that's why Hillel III, who lived in the 3rd century, taught, Al ta'amin ba'atzmecha at yom motcha. Don't be so sure of yourself until the day they carry your ass out of here. Because, you can be a nice, wonderful boy and girl, and you can suddenly, something can change in the stock market, and you can become a, armed car robber, which is something I was thinking of doing at some point. But it wasn't lucrative at the time. Anybody else had a question? There was an arm up here? Or just scratching your armpits? Oh, back here. So what is this? Only this side has questions. Does that mean this side has answers, maybe, yeah? Yes?
So the early Kabbalists have this metaphor that says we start off a very young soul, we're nurtured by God, and then we eventually mature. Just kind of curious, do they speak to, we go through this, like any being will go through a reproductive period? Does that mean the offshoots of Christianity and all the offshoots of that, is that part of the, do they speak to that as being just part of the evolution of who we are?
No, actually, they don't speak about any religion at all. They just, in those terms, they just speak in general in terms that divine inspiration continues in every generation in different ways to everybody, to all peoples. And that's how they speak of it. They don't mention any particular religion because they lived before there was Christianity, in some cases, and certainly before there was Islam. They don't mention Buddhism, they don't mention Native Americanism, they don't mention Judaism, because the concept of ism was really unknown way back then. You were what you were. You were a tribal people. You were of the Hebrew people. You were of the Moabite people. You were of the Ishmaelite people. You were the Canaanite people. And you had your particular way. And that's why in our tradition we have where it says at the end of the Torah that there never again arose a prophet as great as Moses. It says there never again arose a prophet as great as Moses among the Israelites. We make that very clear in our story. So how things evolve and come out through different religions is very old hat. I mean, there were many religions before Christianity. There were religions before there was a Judaism, if you want to label it as religion. The evolution of ideas, of ways to access the spiritual, continues to this very day in very different forms. We give them different labels, right? New Ageism, and this ism, and that ism. Who knows? But the only true way is my way. Yes?
We're gravitating towards this side of the room.
Oh, good.
Is it possible that in Esther, that she was the wisest of the prophets to that point because she realized no one could pronounce the name of God. So that's why she left it out.
I never thought of that. That's beautiful. I like that. See, now that's a Kabbalist. Very well. That's a good commentary. I like that. That's very nice. Maybe because she wrote that scroll. It says in the scroll, and maybe in her wisdom she realized moving into this age now where we have to no longer be categorizing and trying to label God, and instead discover God within everything and everyone and beyond everything and everyone as something that is unknowable to us because God is not created. We are. Good point. Very good. I'm going to use that. A great revelation came to me the other day about
$30.
Right, 35 went up. Yes.
I missed two rabbis' names. The rabbi who was
Yossi, yeah. Jose.
his teacher.
His teacher?
Yes, Rabbi and
Nechunya ben Hakona? Yeah, Nechunya ben Hakone. Nechunya ben Hakone. Nechunya ben Hakone, which means the restful one, son of the reed. So his father was a gatherer of reeds, because we used to write, and we still do actually, we write our sacred scrolls, which is on sheepskin or deerskin, with a reed or with a feather. You have to use, everything has to be organic. And so his father was a reed man. He read a lot, was very well read. Yes?
In any
Oh.
of your teachings and readings, have you come upon the notion that when God was looking for a place to hide, He chose man's heart?
No, I haven't, but that's very beautiful. So, the human being's heart. That's very sweet. So maybe we can discover in each one of our hearts a little bit of the divine. Yeah, there it is. Yes, Ariane?
the other one was the 18th century rabbi who asked his congregation who took judgment on.
His name was Levi Yitzchak. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak, the son of Sarah. Levi Yitzchak ben Sarah, he was known as. He was the rabbi of Barditchev in Russia in the 1700s. He was a great rabbi who always looked for the good in everyone. One day on Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, they found him in the synagogue before the services looking under the benches, the pews, and they asked him, Rabbi, what are you looking for? He said, I'm looking for a Jew. He says, what? I'm looking for a Jew. It's the New Year. And I figured, like a lot of other people, we'd all be, shit-faced and rolling around the floor under the benches. I don't see a single Jew. And he said, Master of the universe, our people come with serious prayer on a New Year. We don't get drunk and go out and do fireworks and stuff. Please listen to our prayers. Or he met a man smoking a cigarette on the Sabbath one day, and or pipe, whatever they smoked back then. He said, you probably don't know that it's the Sabbath. The man said, sure, I know it's the Sabbath. He said, well, maybe you don't know that it's forbidden for a Jew to smoke or light a fire on the Sabbath. Oh, sure, I know. I learned all those laws. Master of the universe. Oh, have you ever seen such an honest people? So he's always looking for the good. Instead of judging people, he always judged everybody favorable, which is what the Talmud teaches us to do. It says, I forgot. It says something really good. You should always judge your fellow in the merit, toward the merit. Yes?
Sure.
Are you a ventriloquist?
I was experienced in the metaphor where we started out as children and now older souls.
Yes.
Very prophetic for anything about where it goes from here.
Where does it go from here?
Yeah.
Well, you know, there's an old Jewish teaching that goes like this. The more we try to ponder what happens next, the more we miss out on what already happened. And so our teachers have stopped at that place. Now, there were some teachers in the Kabbalah who did prophesy or say about things that are going to happen next. They were very few and far in between. And some of them said that eventually the world is going to go into such a spin. This is a teaching by Rabbi Moshe Ibn Nachman, who lived in the 13th century. He said the world is going to spin faster and faster and faster, meaning life, society, culture, until it reaches a climax and goes kaput. And then, V'niskavado no levado bayom ahu. V'niskavado no levado bayom hahu. It's a joyful song we sing in the book of Isaiah, which means, in that day shall God reign alone. And all that will be heard is God's voice saying, "What was I thinking?" And then the curtains go up and a new world comes. Oh, everybody's going to be flying around and nice to each other. It'll be so boring, you're going to miss this world. No taxes, no death taxes, no death, no illnesses. Everything will be so sweet, you're going to be so bored. You're going to miss this freaking challenging world you live in now. So take advantage of it while you're here, because one day you won't be here anymore, according to that. But mostly the teachers taught, live with consciousness of the gift of the moment. Do not worry about tomorrow and what might happen, because that takes us away